Hey, Mitch.
Oh, hey, Ed.
Hey, I was wondering, do you happen to know anything about comics?
Comics, for God's sakes, Ed. I run a Comic Con and I got millions of them. What
Oh,
about them?
well, I've been watching, the season of Loki, and I got to the end, but I'm not really sure about anything. I mean,
Ed, I know all about Thor and Loki and the TVA. I can tell you all about it.
I know about the TVA because I've got my own time baton.
Come on, Ed. That's just a flashlight on the end of a stick.
No, it's not. It's a time, but here, I'll show you. Now, do you believe me? Hi, this is Ed Dollister.
Hello, Ed. This is Mitch Halleck. Oh, I meant to say all the people out there because there's more than just you and I.
That's right. I hope so. Hopefully there is. And welcome to another episode of Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure. Before we begin this week's topic, if you want to find out a little bit more about our show or watch some of our past episodes, our last one on Big Trouble in Little China, E.T., THX 1138, all the hits.
All the hits.
That's right.
More. Yeah.
And more. How can you find out about us?
Oh, and it's easier than crossing the Rainbow Bridge to Asgard. All you have to do is hit the magic button on the bottom here that says subscribe, and you will be notified the next time you and I go on an excellent adventure like we are just about to today.
That's right. In fact, I was just thinking of I follow a catnapping a cattery thing on the internet, and they always say when one of their little cats passes away, they cross over the Rainbow Bridge.
I know. When I was a kid, the Rainbow Bridge had no affiliation with pets dying. It was a comic book reference to the Bifrost, as they call it now in the big movies.
There you go. And we are heading in that direction of Asgard and characters to do with Thor, because we're looking at Loki. And this was just a quick look at, his origins and his movie. And of course, obviously the season that just finished on Disney Plus, which I really enjoyed. But I don't know really a lot about Loki and a lot of all those characters they were talking about. So Mitch, let us know what's going on with Loki.
Like the All-Father Odin, I'm about to download some information from the heavens to your noggin. It all started thousands of years. No, if we really want to get into it, Norse mythology, not mythology. That's somebody else. That's that's that little clock that dances around's cousin. Of course, everybody knows there's Norse mythology. I can't say that. Norse mythology. Thor.
I'll edit this out. I'll edit it out.
I know. No. Yeah. As everybody knows, going to school, there's all types of mythology, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, but the one that we're going to be talking about has to do with the Norse mythology. And that would be Odin, Thor, Loki, the whole kit and caboodle, Balder the Brave. Now, Marvel adapted those stories back in the early 60s when Stan the Man Lee and his brother, actually, Larry Lieber, sat down and said, let's come up with some comics based on a super heroic race of people, and they thought, why not raid something that's basically public domain so we don't have to pay any copyrights, pretty much. So they went after Thor, because before that, there'd been books about Hercules and Samson, and everybody knew those big, strong guys. But no one really ever talked about the Viking legends and all that. So they said, let's go there. So it was fertile material. It was rich and colorful characters and fantasies and all that type of stuff. So they did. So they started with Thor, who was originally Dr. Donald Blake, who was wandering through the woods when, of course, what happens? It's attacked by the Saturn men. These big rock-like creatures came down. It happens all the time. So, being the brave doctor that he was, walking around in a suit and tie, which is also odd, he goes into the 60s. It was the 60s too. He had that, that sharkskin suit. He goes in there, and now one of the things is Dr. Donald Blake also had a leg that was injured, You know, lots of times it's not politically correct nowadays, but all they would refer to him as the lame doctor. You know, oh, if it wasn't for my, handicap, I could move quicker. If it wasn't for my damn leg that's, been wounded. So you didn't know if it was wounded in the war or what happened. But so anyway, he's in this cave and he's trying to get this stick to pry this rock to move out of the way. And when he takes this stick that's laying there and he goes to put it to the ground, he hits it and boom, there's a big flash of lightning and thunder, and the stick is transformed, and so is he. It is not just a walking stick, but it's Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor himself. And it says right on it, he, whoever holds his hammer, be he worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. So suddenly he's the thunder god. He has lightning, wind, rain, all that jazz. He defeats the Saturn men and all that. They go back in their spaceship. They run away. We're all happy. If you want to know what they look like, Thor Ragnarok, there's a creature called Korg. He's a big rock guy.
Yes.
And then Thor fights somebody in Thor the Dark World. There's another big rock guy, and he just hits him with the hammer. Basically, that's what these creatures look like.
Okay.
But it seemed like every other issue of Thor, when it started, there was an alien invasion. It was really, really bad. I mean, not just one or two. There'd be like fleets of ships coming into Earth almost every issue. And Thor would wipe them out and they'd fly back. And it was like, that's the best you got.
Like the Monster of the Week episode.
Absolutely. I mean, it is painful. I mean, I've tried. I have the Thor omnibus, which has like all the early stories. Oh my goodness. It should be called the Mighty Boar instead of the Mighty Thor, because once you read a couple of them, you've read them all. And it's like, they've got to spice this up. So what they did is they started introducing other characters who lived over in Asgard, the land of the gods. And they had Thor's stepbrother or half brother, if you will, Loki. Now, Loki, just like in the movies, was not really Asgardian. He was actually from a race called the Frost Giants, who Odin defeated in battle and took one of the kids. It was like, well, we'll have a peace treaty. I won't destroy you. You won't destroy me. You take my kid, all this stuff. So Loki was raised to think that he was from Asgard, but he really wasn't. And he was never like big, powerful, muscular, and brave like the other characters that you see in Asgard. He was more of this whiny, Weasley. Poor little guy had never a chance. He was always up to something. He's the god of mischief. Yes. That's what they entitled him. It's like, hey, I'm the god of thunder. I'm the god of power. What are you? I'm the god of mischief and lies. Right then and there, it's not going to turn out well. So just as bad as the character had to fight alien invasions, now he had to fight his brother, who basically had the same motivation issue after issue, which was to tell their father, Odin, the king of Asgard, that his brother Thor was trying to date a human, an earthling, Jane Foster. And that's all it was. It's like, oh, today I'll trick Thor in showing that he cares for these humans on the earth. And then I'll show Allfather that he's not worthy to be the heir to the throne. It's like a romance book. So here's Thor fighting all these villains to save Jane Foster, who was the nurse that worked for Dr. Donald Blake. But she would always have these thought balloons like, I can't be in love with Don Blake because he's lame. Like, what kind of nurse is that? That cruel. It's like, I'm here to take care of the wounded and the sick.
That's happened to me many a time,
I know, but it's like, oh, I love you, Don. You're so caring, but you're also lame, and I can't be with you. I'm like, but I want to be with that dreamboat Thor.
Yeah, because he's got two good legs.
Yeah, and then some, and he's got that hammer too. So then you'd have Thor, but like, oh no, if only I can tell Jane that I do love her, but as the mortal Don Blake and not as Thor, because as being an Asgardian, I cannot shed my, promises to the throne to be with her. And as she is a mere mortal, she cannot be with me because I'm a god and I don't want to be seen with her, with my friend. It was that kind of thing. So that happened. And it just went on and on and on. So it wasn't until like literally years later that these stories started getting better, where Loki really started to develop and become more and more devious, more evolved. He started doing alliances with other supervillains and such. And so they would gang up and go after Thor. And
can I ask, where did they sit in like the pantheon of Marvel characters. Like, you know, if you think as a DC guy, you know, you got Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman at the top, and then maybe, you know, Aquaman and Green Lantern the next tier and things like that. Yeah. Where was Loki and
actually Thor and Loki were not on the A list at all. It was always Spider-Man was in the A category, the Fantastic Four. That's pretty much it. And then you had your B levels, which were Captain America, the Hulk. Then it was like C class. That's where Iron Man used to be. Honestly, Iron Man was not a big deal. It was Iron Man, Thor, Daredevil, all your street level characters that really didn't have superpowers. They would just kind of go around and, you know, beat up criminals on the street, like drug pushers. Those were all like way down there, like Luke Cage, and Iron Fist was a karate guy, and, you know, kung fu. So that's it. So Thor was not a really popular character. That's why they'd have the Avengers, and you would get all these kind of lame characters together, and then they weren't so bad. It's like
literally lame.
Iron Man. The lame Avengers, but not that lame. Not physical disability like Jane Foster and her handicap problems. It was more of a lame, as in they weren't cool. They were not cool.
Because I do remember growing up, I think it must have been reruns or whatever. There was a really badly animated
the Marvel series,
which I think, did they have like real mouths? I can't remember if they had.
No, what they did is it was cutouts. What they did is they were trying to save money because it was done on a shoestring budget. So they literally took the frames from the comic books.
Yeah.
And it sounds in theory like cool, like we'll cut out the real artwork by Jack Kirby and these legendary artists, and we'll kind of animate it.
Yeah, so like a motion comic.
But they would like take like the torso, and then they just maybe animate the legs, like trying to run. So you would see this like stiff figure going across the screen, and only the legs would move. Or like you said, they would have a close-up of the face from the comic, and they just kind of articulate the mouth part, and the jaw would go up and down like, yes, Thor, I really want to be with you. And they would use that same animation, if you want to even call it that, about 50 times, and they would just change the dialogue. So they didn't spend a lot of money drawing new frames of footage. It was like, we'll just repurpose this stuff.
Okay.
And that's where, like, I did the voice of Loki. That's where you'll hear that, like, oh no, I'm gonna destroy Thor. And Loki would show up with his horned head. Because, I mean, if you were that stupid, you didn't get the idea that he was supposed to be like a devil creature. They even put horns on his head. It's like, hello, McFly, do we have to like hit you over the head? But then again, he's wearing green and bright yellow, so it's not like a demonic looking character, but he was always kind of a jerk. So these stories go on and on and on, and honestly, Thor was a boring story. It was very like science fiction-y, fantasy. It's like they said, let's go into space and let's take like, what do you call that fake Shakespeare, fake spear, where it's all thou and thee? It sounds like it's really more serious type of language than it really is, but it's more like, what sayeth thou?
Yes, technically Elizabethan theater.
Yeah, that's all it was. It was just like, saith now, Thor.
Yes.
Doeth thou loveth, and everything was like, let's just add a th to it, and
maybe they probably all had lisps. So
they probably did. They're like, hey Thor, what's up? Why are you talking that way? I don't know. Maybe that's why Jane Foster didn't like that, because they had speech impediments as well. I don't know. Jane Foster was a piece of work.
Yeah, it sounds like
Natalie Portman to play her. But then there was the lady Sif, who is in the movies, played by Jamie Alexander. She was actually the love interest of Thor. She liked Thor. But then there was his best friend that they don't talk about anymore, this guy named Boulder the Brave. That was like Thor's right-hand guy, and they would go on adventures together. But he eventually dies.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, was he, who did Zachary Levi play in the Thor movie?
Oh, those are the Warriors 3.
Okay. That was Hogan. Sif, and
Yeah. She hung out with them. There's Volstagg, who's the overweight guy with the beard, who's played by the guy that played the Punisher. I can't think of his name, Irish actor. Oh, for goodness. Ray
Winston, not Ray Winston.
No, hello, Thor. Hello, without Ray Winston. Ray, bloody hell, I can't. I think it's Ray Stevenson. He played the Punisher in the Marvel movie, one of the Marvel Punisher movies. There's been 3 of them. You should do that as a show. Like, how many different Punisher movies have there been? And none of them are good, except for the TV show. And then there's Frendel. That was Zachary Levi. That's actually the second actor. The first one was Dallas Green, who they kind of got rid of, but they don't really talk about it. They just recast him as Zach Levy, and they just gave him the same little blonde goatee. He's supposed to be like the Errol Flynn, the good-looking guy. Hello, here is my overweight friend Volstagg, who will eat you out of house and home. And here's Hogan the Grim. And that was a guy that had just the dark and the mustache, and he had a mace with him. He was not a happy camper. And they were the Warriors 3. They had their own little adventures. They were like Thor's little buddies.
Yep.
Asgard was full of sidekicks. You know, they all had something. So eventually, Loki, God knows, Loki must have got more trouble. I remember once he's punished, he's turned into a tree. I mean, Odin says, okay, you will become a tree and you will never be taken out of that form until one of my gods, Heimdall, the guy that guards the portal, who's always watching, he's like this, he sees everything. If he ever sheds a tear, then the spell will be broken and you will be free. It's like, why make that the way to get out of it? So what Loki does,
send him some onions.
He controls the leaves on the tree because he's a tree and he can do this stuff. And one day Heimdall's just walking by and Loki makes a leaf fall off of his body and pokes him in the eye. And that little poke makes a little tear run down Heimdall's eye. And once that happens, I am free. And he jumps out of the tree. I can now go to the earth and bother my brother Thor once again. And he would go down there and start trouble all over again because that's what he does. He's the god of mischief. And eventually, Ragnarok happens. Ragnarok happened a couple times in the comics. They make it look like it's doomsday, which it is, but they figure, after 6-7 years, we got a whole new turnout of new kids. They don't read. They don't know about what happened 7 years ago. Let's do that Ragnarok story again. So they would do kind of rehash the same stories again and again in comic books. Like the Fantastic Four must have broken up more times than the Beatles. When you read it as a kid, you think, oh my God, this is devastating. Superman's dead.
Yep.
What's going to happen? You don't realize it's just a marketing ploy.
Yes.
And they're going to just wait a couple months and sell some other books. And oh, by the way, Superman was okay. He was just a little sleepy. So same thing. Oh, Ragnarok, the end of the gods, Asgard's wiped out. About a year later, it got better and they come back again. So I don't know. It is what it was. And Thor was really a boring comic. I got to admit, it was not a book that you went and got religiously. It was like on the bottom of the barrel. If you went to the store and they didn't have any Spider-Mans, or they didn't have any Fantastic Four, or they didn't have any Hulks, maybe they had some Man Things, and you're starting to, oh, they got some Thor. I guess I'll read this.
Yeah.
And you'd buy it and you'd go home and go, why did I buy this Thor comic book? It was never a good, it wasn't a good story. It wasn't a good guy.
So I suppose, I was just going to say, so I suppose after the, the success of Iron Man, the movie in 2008, they're looking for other characters to bring out. That's when they think Thor, I suppose, would be visually appealing, as a blockbuster movie. Much better than the Thor they had in the 80s. They did do a live action Thor. It was in one of those Hulk TV movies. It was played by an actor named Eric Kramer. And he had like a Viking hat and he had like this big furry vest, and he kept calling Lou Ferrigno's Hulk a troll. Come on, troll, let us fight. And the hammer he had looked like something he picked up at the local hardware store. It wasn't this magical Mjolnir and all that. It was just literally like he was going to hang some nails or something, So that was a bad one. That's a bad movie. Yeah.
I think that's the trial of not the trial of the Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk returns and goes surfing. One of those stories. Yeah. So the reason why they had to do Thor is because they didn't have the rights to the Fantastic Four. They didn't have the rights to Spider-Man. They didn't have the rights to the Hulk. Actually, that was at Universal. So Marvel didn't have many characters. So they said, look, what do we got? They said, well, we got the C class. We got Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and that's about it. Mm-hmm. So an Ant-Man, of course you have Ant-Man. So let's try to do something with it. So they went back and they said, let's stay to the origin. So that's why when you watch the first Thor movie, which is actually co-written by J. Michael Straczynski, JMS, who's famous for Babylon 5 and a bunch of other shows. He's one of the writers. He's actually in Thor. If you watch it, he has a brief cameo on the screen. He's one of the folks that are trying to get Thor's magic hammer out of the ground when it lands in New Mexico. But it was the same story once again. Loki wants to take the throne. He can't because he's jealous of Thor, the rightful heir to Asgard. So he has to make him look bad. So what does he do? He tricks him. He sends him down to the earth. He pretends that their father's dead. He tells them, you can't come back. You've been banished. Thor's on the earth. He falls in love with Jane Foster, played by Natalie Portman. Meanwhile, Loki is up to no good. He's over there ruling Asgard because that's all he wants is to take the throne. And then eventually he's foiled. And in one of the goofiest scenes ever, they destroy the Rainbow Bridge, aka the Bifrost Bridge. So Thor cannot go back to Earth to go see Jane Foster again. Makes no sense. And that end scene, Loki is falling off the bridge. Thor's holding Loki, and Odin is holding Thor by the foot. So it's this weird human chain at the very edge of this broken bridge. Like, why did he grab him by the foot? I mean, it just looks kind of awkward. So Loki just runs off. He doesn't want to be captured because he feels bad for what he did. And that's in the Marvel movies. And then, of course, he disappears. He's found by Thanos, and Thanos tells him about how he's going to take over everything. And he gives him what we call the Loki pokey stick that has a little mind gem in it that he can, rule men's minds. He comes back and, you've seen that now. He comes back in the Avengers. He tries to take over. He's the army of the Chitauri. He opens a portal. They come in to invade the Earth. The Avengers show up. They save the day. And then what do? They take Loki away. In that timeline, he goes back to Asgard. He goes on trial. They put him in prison. Then Malekith and the Dark Elves come, led by Christopher Eccleston and some really bad makeup. Mm-hmm. And one of the lamest of the Marvel movies, The Dark World. Loki saves the day a couple times, but once again, we think Loki's dead. But he's not dead again. The second time we think he's dead. He's actually changed shape because he's a big shapeshifter because he's the god of mischief and deceit. Yep. And he takes over Asgard, unbeknownst to Thor, who leaves Asgard to go back to the earth. Then we find him in episode 3 of Thor, which is Ragnarok. He's disguised as Odin because the real Odin somehow is sent to Earth on a old folks home. I don't know. They never really explain what happened there, but Loki did that. And then, of course, he just dies like Yoda does in Return of the Jedi. It's like, I've had enough. Yeah, I'm dead. Oh, and by the way, before I leave, your firstborn, my firstborn, your sister, Hela, the goddess of death, is about to show up in 5 minutes. Good luck with that, guys. I'm out of here. So Odin dies. Then Thor and Loki once again team up and they defeat her, and Ragnarok starts. And then what happens is the end game. Now Loki dies for a third time when Thanos crushes his throat. Mm-hmm. And we think that's pretty much the end of his timeline. And that plays into the Loki TV show. We find out in Avengers Endgame that given the opportunity to get the Tesseract, Loki grabs it and alters that timeline. And then boom, this is where we start up now. He's captured by the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, because he's disrupted the timeline. And that's where we pick up on the Loki TV show. Now, the TVA is from a comic book that was created by Walt Simonson, who had a big run on Thor, but he also did some work on the Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. And he had the character of Moebius, who's played by Owen Wilson, who had a mustache, who was modeled after this other comic book guy named Mark Grunwald. And basically what they did is watch over time and make sure that everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, because now and then people would cheat and they'd somehow go through time and warp things out and change history. And these folks came there to make sure the sacred timeline is preserved and everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. But now this is going to help you out with Kang. Kang is from the 31st century. He's in the comics. He's also a big villain with the Avengers. He's a scientist who discovered that there are multiple dimensions, that there are parallel universes. So what he does is open a portal, and in each one of those universes, that version of Kang is doing the same thing at the same time. So basically, they all discover electricity at the same time, and they all shock themselves. So they all meet each other. That's not a good thing, because some of the Kangs are scientific, Some of them are bitter and miserable. Some of them want to rule the world. Some of them are just jerks. And what do? They have the war of the Kangs. That's a true thing. They all fought each other. And then there shall be only one survives. And that's Kang the Conqueror, because he's conquered all the other multi-universes. And he would come into the Avengers storylines and try to destroy the Avengers because, they're like the protectors of the earth and such. But there'd be variances of him, a different Kang. Dr. Doom from the Fantastic Four. One of the stories is that because Dr. Doom invented a time machine, that he's actually Kang, that he somehow went from the 20th century and became the ruler of the 31st century with all his technology. And then there's another one who went back into Egyptian times and built the Sphinx and the pyramids, and his name was Ramatut. But it's all the same guy. It's just he's traveling throughout history, changing things the way he wants to do it. So it's a very complicated, whenever you get into time travel, you get a headache because you're like, well, if he defeats them today or they defeat him, can't he just go back into another time like the Terminator and just go back the day before with the knowledge that what's going to happen, then fix it again? But they would make it so, even just like the Terminator movies, you can never really change the big events. You could try to, but for some reason, there's like a timeline. Things have to happen the way they do. You can only alter things a little bit. And that's what they tell you about in the Loki TV show. There was these little branches, like here's the main highway. And then there's little off ramps that try to like change things, and that their job was to go back there and prune them like a hedge clipper. So if they started to spread out, they would go there and they'd stop it, and they'd put that little time bomb there, and it would detonate and would wipe out that timeline. So that's what they were doing with Loki. I mean, our Loki didn't want to go back once he found out how he died. He saw his life pass before him and he wasn't too thrilled. It was like, It's a Wonderful Life. And then he met another version of himself.
Yep.
Who was a woman.
Sylvie.
And then he met, yes, Sylvie. And then he met a bunch of other Lokis. One's an alligator. One was more like the comic book version, played by Richard
Grant. Richard E. Grant.
Richard Grant. Yeah, he was the one that looked just like Loki in the comics with the horns and the yellow and red gold outfit. Then there was another Loki, the bigger guy with the hammer. Then there was the kid Loki that they didn't get into much, who had the smaller wings on his head, because he actually killed Thor in his timeline. That was his big punishment there. So it was really intriguing that way. I mean, the way they set him up, because Loki's traditionally this two-dimensional villain, this cardboard cutout with the twirling mustache, and now he's almost the hero of this TVA, because the TVA was this big, I don't know, what do you want to call it, this all-knowing, I don't know,
corporation.
Yeah. They were like, you can't do that. If you try to change things, we're going to go back and we're going to wipe you out. So they have this control over all the time. And they would, they'd hit you with that stick that you had in the beginning, the little time stick, and just wipe you.
I'm glad you're feeling better too. I'm glad.
Yeah. And we noticed now that really didn't kill anybody.
No.
It just sent them to the end time. Well, like, what was that? The end of all time, that little dimension they all lived in. So they really didn't.
With the dragon cloud,
Yeah, the dragon cloud. It was all very Wizard of Oz-y. That's, you know what I mean? It's like you get sent to this other world and you can't go beyond the cloud or the wall where the emperor lives, who rules everything.
There were lots of elements. I mean, we've been speaking for half an hour now about it, but we haven't even mentioned Tom Hiddleston yet. The actor playing Loki. I think that he really makes the character a likable, mischievous character, and he really embodies that character. You can see, I feel like you get the sense that he really enjoys playing it, and he has said that he will play that for ever until
I believe it.
And probably he's obligated contractually to do that as well, so
no, he gets into it. Did you see a couple of years ago he showed up at the San Diego Comic-Con?
That's right, as the character. Yeah, which was good.
Yeah.
And to a surprise, I thought Loki was only going to be a single season, but the season finale, it came. Loki will return in season 2. So that's kind of interesting. It ended, for me, the series was great. It reminded me, and I think I've spoken to you offline about this. I felt like it was a big budget DC Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah,
sort of what they did. And I sort of feel for the Legend of Tomorrow guys, because they don't get enough love and people go, "Oh, that's so groundbreaking! Oh, going in timelines and fixing stuff." Well, they've been doing it for a little while.
Yeah.
But the production design is killer. That 70s sort of vibe of the TVA, the logo of the TVA, even with the little hourglass in the TVA is beautiful. Everything like that.
And what's the little clock? It's voiced by
Tara Strong.
Tara Strong is the voice of Miss Minute.
I think so. Which is influenced by, Jurassic Park. And there's so many things that you sort of see, I
was thinking of Bob the Paperclip. Remember that when Windows started, there was that little paperclip. Like,
Clippy. Was it Clippy? Was that Clippy?
Clippy. Yeah. Hi, what can I help you with today? That's what every time it would show up, it's like, or something from Walt Disney World. Like when you go down to Disney World and you're waiting in line for one of the rides, it's like,
yes,
hey, y'all, you're not supposed to touch each other. Make sure you wash your hands. Good. It just seemed like that little 50s or 60s little smiley cartoon character that's really maniacal and evil at the same time.
That's right. Yeah, I like that. I thought the production values were really good, and the performances. Owen Wilson was great.
Did you tell it was a COVID production though? Did you get the feeling that they were on a set with only like 2 people?
Well, for me, they used the volume, which is what they used for the Mandalorian, and in the Mandalorian, it was seamless.
But not Loki.
In this, it looked like a 19 70s, the Love Boat when they're looking over the water.
Screen.
It's just a projection. I felt like a lot of the
I was going to say the one that really made me notice it was when they were on that doomed planet that the moon was coming to crush the planet, and they were walking, and Sylvie and Loki are walking, and they're having a conversation, but they would only walk about 20 or so steps, and they would break, and then they'd kind of flip the camera, and then they'd continue the conversation for another 20 steps, break, do it, and they just kept doing that. I was like, because they're only on a set that's so big and they have that rear projection, I'm like, they should have thought of some way to make it like a circular thing so they could keep walking.
Treadmill,
like a treadmill, almost like the old 1920s silent movies where they'd be running in the background and it would go like a Scooby-Doo cartoon.
That's right.
It was noticeable. I mean, it really was one of those things that took me out of it because there was nothing in the foreground. You needed to have like a picture or something in the foreground so you didn't think it's all a projection behind them, because when they do it in The Mandalorian, like you said, they'll go outdoors. They'll be in the sunlight. There'll be rocks around them. So you don't really get the idea. You really think you're on an alien planet. But when they did it in Loki, for some odd reason, they didn't put anything to give it some depth. It just looked like this purple sky with these shooting stars. It looked like the green screen stuff we do here on our show. And I would assume Disney has a lot more money than a $12 green screen I got from Amazon.com.
I spend thousands of dollars on these effects. What are you talking about, Mitch?
Well, there's that too. But here's the other odd thing too. And you know a lot about storytelling and plays and all that. Was it a cop out? Did you see it coming that they wanted to make Loki I wouldn't say an anti-hero. He's almost like the hero of the story. Why is there this desire to take the two-dimensional, the mustache twirling villains and give them a sense of, I don't know, empathy for the character? They want the audience to feel bad for them.
Well, I think
they can't just be black and white villains anymore.
I think that maybe audiences are a little bit more sophisticated and they want something, a little bit more deeper. And you want to, like the main character of a show, don't you? I think that if you don't, why would you?
It's like Hannibal Lecter. Like you would never think Hannibal the Cannibal would be a hero.
No,
but he's they kind of turned him into some.
I didn't watch the TV show. So
the other long running show about Dexter. Yeah, I mean,
I didn't watch that either. So
I didn't watch it either because I don't like villains that they're trying to say they're the good guy because they're not. Their methods aren't to be.
Again, I think the key is he's the god of mischief, and mischief is sort of subversive behavior, but it sort of skirts within. It's not like he's, killing.
Well, do you think he's condemned to do these things? Like, even if he doesn't want to, it's just like,
could be, it's his nature. I think so.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Thor said to him when they're going in an elevator. He's like, well, Loki, I always thought you and I would be fighting together like brothers and, on and on. But at the end of the day, you're you. And that's just never going to happen because you're basically a jerk, and and then they tell him too, Owen Wilson as Moebius sits down and says, you've stabbed people 51 times in the back. I mean, this is what you do. It's like, And he's like, no, I don't. I'm going to try to be better. And they're like, but you can't. You're like the god of destruction. Whatever you touch is going to fall apart and just and he destroys the whole TVA.
Yep.
He destroys the whole world that they're in. And he can't help himself.
Yep.
He's like a serial screw up.
Yeah. Well, maybe he is. And maybe that's why we like him, because, we see a little bit of us in him. I don't know.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, that's it. And that's
I don't know. I'm just
no, I
curious.
agree. Did you feel like just the ending was a little bit wishy-washy of the series? I don't
think it was an ending.
Well, when he came back to the TVA and they're going, oh, we're in a different, and then you look, it reminded me of a poor Planet of the Apes remake.
Yeah.
Reveal, because I'm going, oh, isn't that the same person that wasn't? I didn't realize that was Kang or whatever, and
oh, you didn't. Oh, that's a whole other story. Like I said, the Kang, who's going to be the big bad guy in the next series of films, he's going to pop up in Ant-Man 3 Quantum Mania.
Yeah,
because it might be a different Kang, because I thought this interpretation of the character reminded me of the Riddler when Jim Carrey played him, when you get this over the top like wackiness.
I felt like he was when I was saying to Kelly, he goes, he seems a bit like a Shakespearean actor.
Yeah.
And I thought he was really interesting, but I just felt it was a little bit too
much
talky,
Yeah. I was like, hey, could we, I get it. Okay, you've gone crazy, because he couldn't see what was going to happen anymore. He was like the god of time or whatever, the ruler of everything, but it comes to an end and he can't see beyond what's going to happen. And then eventually he died. Or I thought not only did he die, I thought he almost set it up so they would kill him. Like he went insane. Like that drove him mad.
Yeah.
And he was in that castle hoping that one of the Lokis would come by. Did you think it was odd that Loki and Sylvie kiss, because basically that's him, an alternate reality of Loki?
You know what? Who hasn't, I'm just thinking, who hasn't kissed themselves?
No, but I mean, ultimately it's like, well, that's kind of weird. And that's what caused the big destruction of everything, is because it was almost like antimatter and matter hooked up, and that's what did it. I mean, it was interesting.
I did look, I thought they were two totally different people. It's not like one, if they both look
if one had the beard
identical, like Spock.
Good Spock. Yeah.
Actually, because we watched Gemini Man last night with Will Smith, the younger version of Will Smith. And of course the older version, goatee. But
everybody knows once you get a goatee, you're evil.
I know. That's right. I'm the real me's still in the cupboard. Locked away. Yeah.
Eating Vegemite.
That's right. Anyway, that didn't bother me at all, because I felt like they were totally different, people. They didn't look the same. They were, different experiences, all that sort of stuff. That didn't bother me.
What bothered me, he used a force power that Loki does not possess in any of the comic books or any of the prior films. When there was that tower about to fall, and suddenly he put his hands out like Ray and he stopped it. I'm like, wait, Loki doesn't have the force. What's going on here? It was like, everybody move. I'll stop this.
Yeah.
It was.
And has he ever used that again? No, I'm sure he could have used that. It's one of those.
It's one of those things. Oh, I mean, he's like a card trick. That's what he really could do. A couple, look over there, misdirections, and on and on and on. But no, I mean, Hiddleston, I had the opportunity. I met him once in New York Comic Con in 2010, I think it was 2011. And he's a close talker, very tall man. He was like 6'3". I'm like 5'10". And I remember I was in a press line, shouldn't have been there, but I just figured my way in. And they said, oh, would you like to ask Tom Hiddleston a question? I'm like, of course I would. So Tom comes up and I'm like, oh yeah. I work for a podcast called the IndieCast. This guy Ed sends me. Could you ever, if you had a chance to go look in historical mythology things, what would you do if you can go back in time? Which is funny because I did tell him if you can go back in time, and he says, and he came really close because he's a close talker. And I thought he was going to yell at me because I didn't have clearance to be there. But he said, if I could go back in time, I would go back to the days of William Shakespeare and see if he truly wrote all the plays credited to him, because they say he didn't write them all. That's the thing. I would go back. I really want to know that. And I go, oh wow, that's really cool. I was thinking more of the Lost Ark. Do you know how many times I've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark? No. Ask me. How many times have you seen Raiders of the Lost Ark? Over 300 times. Get out of here. No, I know. I'm an indie fan. No. And he went on about it, and he started quoting dialogue from the movies. And I'm
That's
like,
cool.
He's nuttier than me. So yeah. So Hiddleston, too bad he's got Loki. He could have probably been in Indiana Jones 5 as like a British spy or something, or maybe like a secret Nazi in the 60s.
He would have been good. He would have
been like a good Belloc. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Well, you never know.
I do believe that if they recast Doctor Who and he likes staying on TV, he would be a perfect Doctor Who.
They should just say, here's $10 million. Do 12 episodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree.
Just do it. You know what? That wouldn't be a bad idea to get Doctor Who going again. Not that Jodie Whittaker is horrible, but just to get people like watching it again. Everybody gets 1 year, and that's it. And Daniel Craig gets a year, and then Tom Hiddleston gets a year, and it's just like James Bond Doctor Who, Loki Doctor Who, and they're all different Doctor Who's, and they don't care about the generations and how many lives he's at. It's like, forget it. We don't care. We're throwing that out the window. We're just going to tell a 12-part story with this guy as the lead, and whatever he does with the character, just spruce it up. Because honestly, it's been, what did they bring back Doctor Who, like 2005 maybe?
Was that
like,
with
Eccleston,
Christopher Eccleston,
the dark elf of Malachi himself? And
it brings it all back to Thor and Loki. So
and your leather jacket, so you're dressed just like him.
I am, and I've got my that's as TVA as I could find.
Your retro thing.
Yeah, I know. That's as close.
No, it's good. I'm looking forward to seeing it, because it one thing it did is by having all those different Lokis, the alligator Loki that they call Croaky, that people like. It's going to be a toy coming near you soon.
I bet there is.
I thought you were reaching for an alligator that had horns.
I've got my cat here. Actually, I do have an alligator somewhere out here. Damn it.
Oh no. So no, but I'm saying they're going to have tons of merchandise from it. They're going to turn Loki into the cool guy, and everyone's there. So season 2, I don't know when season 2 comes back. They never announced it. They just said Loki will come back, but they didn't tell us when. But they're going to have the Multiverse of Madness, which is a Doctor Strange movie next March.
Which ties into WandaVision a little bit, doesn't it? Yeah.
And Spider-Man has a whole thing going on with the different Spider-Men from different movies coming together. So multiple Lokis is just really just setting the groundwork. So when you go to see it in the big screen, you'll be like, oh, they did this on the Loki show, So I don't know.
I hate for those people who actually just go to the movies to watch a movie and don't have to
don't watch the TV
12
show.
hours research or whatever. But
hey.
So that's it, Loki. Enjoyable, and it'll be interesting to see what they do for season 2. You know what's also enjoyable is watching some of our past seasons, some of our fantastic shows on Land of the Lost, Superman the movie, rest in peace, Richard Donner, who recently passed away. We've got lots of great shows coming up, and a really good one, not to dissuade you from watching this, because if you've reached this point, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
There'll be something extra in your paycheck at the end.
That's right. We've got another great episode coming up next. But to find out those other episodes, how can you find out when we have a show ready to go?
Well, it's easy as kissing your alternate universe self on an episode of this show. What? All you do is press the button. See, the alternate version of you would be pressing the button right now.
That's
because
right.
It's evil. But to show that you're a good person, you should do it. No, the alternate version wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
They would be the bad guys. They'd have the goatee. But because you're a good person, you're going to subscribe. You'll do that. You'll subscribe to Mitch and Ned's Excellent Adventure. You'll get
Obi-Wan?
You'll get us that YouTube money. You'll do what I say. This is the YouTube show you're looking for.
Yes.
Go back and watch all the other ones, especially the low-rated ones, please. I like doing
There's so many of those to choose from as well, so you'll be right.
Hey, when our drive-in show gets more viewers than ET, if you just go back and watch the openings, it still counts and it gets us numbers, but they're the best part of the show.
Kelly always says we should do just a clip show of all the openings. I'll just
I
put them
think
all
so
together.
too.
Yeah.
Internet gold will break it more than a Kim Kardashian's something.
Yeah.
She breaks the
Anyway,
internet all the time.
That's right. That's right. Anyway, that's our look back at Loki.
Loki.
That's right. Well, that's it for the show. This is Ed Dollister.
This is Mitch Halleck.
And
See you
thanks
in
for
the
watching.
paper.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, Loki.